All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back again. I apologize for the little gap in streaming there, but I was informed by my good buddy Poker News CA _ Matt, who is Matthew Pro at Poker News Canada, ca.pokernews.com, that I was not sending any audio out into the etherverse out there, so I had to reset my system so it was picking up my lovely melodious tones of my voice, which it now is. Of course, as Murphy would always have happen while we were off stream, we had a awfully fun hand that we played where we split a big pot with that was in 3 ways or 4 ways perhaps, and ended up pulling out about an extra 2,000 chips over where we were sitting before. So we're doing okay. Let me get back. I was talking about the you don't know what I was talking about because there was no sound when we were here before. So let's go back and go over what exactly we are doing here. We are here at Anything But Hold'em today, playing fixed limit Omaha high-low. This is a $3.30 Micro Millions tournament. It's 059 that started at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, my time. Late registration ends in 27 minutes. And of course, we had a 5,000 starting stack, as is typical with these Micro Millions and big games. Okay, right, we're playing fixed limit Omaha high-low. We could actually play this. The ace-4 is a decent low hand. The ace-king is decent. We've got flushes, but at the end of the day, it's not super strong in any of our categories that we're looking for. So we can also just get rid of it and go. For the record, I'm also playing 2 other tables off stream today, so if I hesitate in my voice, I do apologize for that. It probably just means that I'm playing something over on the far side. Getting back to what we're playing, as I said, it's the Micro Millions 59 $3.30 FLO8. Fixed limit Omaha high-low is also sometimes known as a fixed limit 08, which can be abbreviated as FLO8 or FLO8. So we are playing some FLO8 today from the Micro Millions. There were a total of 3,976 people so far registered. It was initially a $5,000 guarantee tournament, but we have long since smashed that guarantee to hell. There's now $11,949 in the prize pool and just growing. It's absolutely certain that we're going to be in the $13,000, possibly as high as $15,000 prize pool range by the time this registration closes in 26 minutes. We will be probably having slightly reduced registration as time goes on, just because the bet sizes are getting bigger, and that makes it far less attractive to jump in. I was informed by my good buddy Poker News CA _ Matt. Sorry about that. I just had myself talking in my ear, which is never a fun thing to have happen when you're streaming. So we'll fold out over here. So yeah, we've got we've still got 3,540 odd people left in the tournament. We're sitting at 259th at the moment, which is well in the cashing range for now. But as I said, it's still super early days. I mean, registration hasn't even closed yet, so it's no time to be looking at where you're sitting in the tournament. Basically, all we need to look at right now is, do we have chips in front of us? Is it a larger stack than a lot of other people on the tables around us? And if the answers to those questions are yes, then we should be happy with a smile on our face and play the game as it comes to us. It's really, at this point, just useless to be looking at your position overall in the tournament. You obviously want to be looking at your chip stack and making sure that you have enough chips to play and to make the moves that you want to make. But beyond that, whether you're sitting 100th or 200th or 300th at this point or first is really largely immaterial. The only position in there that really isn't immaterial potentially is if you're sitting in first. We got into this hand, I'm not exactly sure why, because we have very bad low possibilities, but we've actually flopped into a fairly nice wrap straight situation draw. We've got the 7-8 down below, we got the 10 queen up above, so we've got crap loads of equity here, I think. Given the fact that there's only one low card on the board, I don't think we can get away from this in any way, shape, or form, nor do we even want to consider getting away from it in any way, shape, or form, I think. So we're in for the cap bets, at least on this round. We're not real thrilled with the queen, frankly. That does give us the 8, 9, 10 jack queen straight, but it's the low end of that, and anybody with the 10 king is basically killing our action in that. It does kill off any low, so our lack of low hand is no longer much of a problem for us. We pretty much have to check call through here unless the betting goes like super cappy crazy on this, in which case we might be able to find a fold somewhere, but we're sitting on a straight, which is going to be really hard to get rid of on this board, I think. It's not the nut straight, but it's basically the second nut straight, is it not? 10 king is the nut straight, and 8-10 is the second nut straight. So yeah, I mean, I'm on the second nut straight. There's only one straight hand that beats me out there. I really don't think that there's any way I can get away, nor should I be trying to get away, I think. Yeah, and we're scooping that pot because we did that. I mean, I'm sure that I wasn't ever considering folding on that river, just for the record. The reason it took so long to call was also not because I was necessarily because I was slow rolling anybody. The point was just that I was trying to explain to everybody why I was what made me think that it was a good call, even given the fact that I wasn't sitting holding the nut straight, which is usually something that you want to do in the Omaha, or in the Omaha settings. Alrighty, so 5, 6, 8, 10 is not really a great hand. We've got the spades to work with, which is connected set, of course. That makes the hand somewhat more valuable, but at the end of the day, that's not a terribly valuable hand in a stud or in any sort of a high-low situation. So you probably just want to quietly pass that back to the dealer and say, I do not want to play this round, thank you very much. Please let the rest of the players continue to play this round while I sit and watch. You always have the option of doing that, ladies and gentlemen. You do not have to play your cards. If you do not want to play your cards, you can always look at the dealer with a nice smile on your face and say, Mr. Dealer, please take my cards back. I do not want to play this round. And there will never, ever be a problem with that. That is always one of your options. There are times in the later stages of tournaments, especially in satellite format tournaments, where that is absolutely the most profitable play that you can make, is just to, even without even looking at your cards sometimes, just to hand them back to the dealer and go, thank you, Mr. Dealer, I just want to sit here on my pile of chips and do nothing for the next little while all of these other people fight for the final few spots that need to be done, because I have no need to fight for those spots. And that's a vital part of tournament poker strategy that I think is sometimes missed by players that come over from cash. For the record, I should probably mention, speaking of that, I am almost exclusively a tournament poker player. I do play a little bit of cash from time to time. Rarely do I play No Limit Hold'em cash. If I play cash, it's going to be something like Badoogie or Raz or Stud High Low, most likely, where I feel I have something of an edge over the other players. But even that, I rarely play cash games. I am a tournament poker specialist, or at least that's what I'm trying to be. They are different games, I think. They simply play differently. They have different rule sets. They have different things that you have to consider. And one of the major differences and one of the things that you have to consider as a tournament player is the value of your life. As a cash game player, the value of your life is very low. No, you don't want to bust the chip sitting in front of you, but in a cash game you can always pull out your wallet, buy in another, grab another buy-in, and sit down with another big pile of chips in front of you and continue to try to do what you were trying to do before. This is not an option in most tournaments. Now there are things like rebuy and re-entry tournaments. We're not talking about those. We're talking about regular single entry, MTT, and sit and go type environments here. And in those, it is not an option to pull your wallet out and buy another stack of chips and sit down and continue to try to do what you're doing. Once your stack of round betting orbs is finished, you get up and you leave the poker room. That's the way tournaments work. So, focusing on ensuring that you always have chips at the end of the hand to be able to play the next time the cards are dealt out by the dealer is a vital part of playing tournament poker. It's not so vital that you give up high equity spots to fold because there's a chance that you're going to get knocked out. It's not that kind of important to think about, but it's important to think about in the sense that when you commit all your chips, you are saying, my hand is good enough that it outweighs the fact that I might have no chips left to play with when the dealer deals out the cards on the next time. And I don't think cash players who come to tournament from cash think about that aspect of tournament play often enough and strongly enough. Believe me, it does not mean that you play less aggressively. It does not mean that you don't take the opportunities when you find them. But what it does mean is that when you have 12 big blinds, you don't always have to shove your ace-9 on the button, as you might expect you have to do in a cash game environment. There are times when you can fold that and know that you're going to be able to play another hand or two hands or three hands or four hands or five hands or six hands or even an orbit or two, and wait for a better spot to have that work. So I think tournament poker does require a different mindset than a different skill set than cash poker. I think that both are totally valid forms. I just think that they're entirely different games, and you need a different toolbox to play each one. I like to focus on the tournament, so you won't see a lot of cash games on this stream, although you will see them from time to time. It's like any of the rules that I have on here. There will be occasions upon which it makes sense to break every rule that I make. So we will maybe see some cash games on here at some point. Will we ever see a cash no limit hold'em game? That seems highly unlikely, given that we are on a program called Anything But Hold'em, and I've just told you that I'm rarely going to play cash. I would think that combining those two together, the likelihood of us ever playing a cash hold'em approaches zero fairly quickly, I think. I wouldn't say it's quite at zero yet, but it's approaching zero without a doubt. Alrighty, let's talk a little bit about our prize pools over here in this 08 game that we're playing. As I said, we got well over 12,000 in there now. We're coming up on 13,000 for the prize pool. It's 12,756 right now. We are sitting with 540 places paying out at the moment. And what that means is that there is over $2,000 up top for first place. We are sitting right now at $2,007.52 for first place. And 540th place min cash is $5.36, which isn't awesome off of our $3.30 buy-in, but it's not a horrible way to, not a horrible takeaway from your day of poker. I'm never thrilled when I'm in cash, but I try never to be upset when I'm in cash either, because if you're min cashing and you are taking away more money than you paid to play the tournament, you've had a good day at the poker tables. You may not have had the best day at the poker tables, or you may not have had a great day, but you've had a good day at the poker tables, folks, if you're taking away more money than you sat down with. This is the point of poker, and yes, the point of poker is to maximize the amount of more money you take away than you sit down with. But no matter what the percentage you're looking at is, when you walk away with more money than you sat down with, you've had a good day of poker. So even in cash, we're going to be relatively happy with. I have kind of something of a strategy that I apply to my tournament play, and it applies pretty much across the formats. It's a strategy for playing poker tournaments as opposed to playing a particular kind of poker tournament, if that makes sense. You obviously have to adjust this to in certain ways to various speeds and formats of game. But generally speaking, I look at poker tournaments not as one monolithic entity where I'm trying to amass all the chips and be the winner at the end of the tournament. That is, of course, what I'm trying to do. Don't get me wrong. I'm not somebody who's looking to simply get to the final table and have that as my final goal. That's not what I'm looking for. Amassing all the chips and being the only person left at the end with chips is the only goal you should have when you buy into a poker tournament. It is the only goal that makes any sense when you buy into a poker tournament, and it is the only thing that you should have your sights set on. That said, in order for you to be the person at the end of the tournament sitting with all of the chips while everybody else has no chips, there are several things that you have to do along the way. And if you don't do those things along the way, there is never going to be a chance of you sitting at the end with a big stack of chips in front of you while everybody else looks on in envy because they have no chips left. For example, one of the things in a tournament like this, Micro Millions, that you have to do is you have to survive past late registration. If you bust out of the tournament before the registration closes, well, your chances of being the guy sitting at the end of the chips with all the chips are pretty low at that point. I'm thinking that, we were talking before about approaching zero. These are approaching zero pretty darn fast at that point. Likewise, once you get past the late registration phase, you have to cash before you can ever have a hope of sitting at the end with all the chips. So once you get past the late registration phase, you look at a min cash as your temporary goal and objective. It's not the end goal. It's not what you're after. It's not the final product that you're looking for. But it's a place that you need to be before you're ever going to have a chance of getting to the goal that you're looking for. So the bubbles burst and you're sitting on a min cash and you're going, this is cool, we got our $5.40 locked up here, and we're laughing. We've managed to achieve the objective of poker. We are going to walk away from this table with more money than we sat down with, and that is always the objective of poker. But it's not the final objective. There's other things that you want to keep doing with that. You still want to be the guy at the end with all the chips in front of you, or the girl at the end with all the chips in front of you. So the next step along the road is maybe you got to be at the final table in order to amass all the chips, or maybe there's a day change, and they're going to close play at 18 players, 2 tables, and come back for the next day. Well, you got to be on those 2 tables when they close play for the day. So you look at your tournament and you set those sorts of goals, mid-goals, on the way to your final goal. And it's not a case of saying, well, no, I'm no longer going to have the goal of winning this poker tournament. That's not what you're doing. What you're doing is recognizing the fact that in order to be the guy sitting at the end with all of the chips in front of him, you're going to have been at all of these other places along the way at some point before that's going to happen. So focusing on those midpoints as you're going helps you not get overwhelmed by the task of being the guy at the end with all the chips when there's 4,000 people in a tournament. At least I find it does. Alrighty, haven't been talking about too many hands while I've been talking about tournament strategy. I think we'll focus a bit on the pokers over here for a bit. Looks like some nice flush possibilities going on here. You got to think with 4 people in an Omaha hand that somebody's got spades. It's hard to imagine that nobody here has spades and 16 cards. There we go, ace queen of spades up there. Yep. So in that sort of situation, one of the things to recognize with Omaha is that with the extra 2 cards that everybody gets, when a big hand comes in on the river and there's more than 2 people in the pot, don't look at that and go, well, it's, there's no chance that he's been playing spades this whole time. Well, yes, there is a chance that he's been playing spades this whole time, and that chance is very high in an Omaha game. Just like there, I mean, as soon as I saw the 3rd spade come up there on the river, I'm like, somebody in this 4-handed game has got to have spades. There's just no way that in those 16 cards, there's not 2 spades somewhere. That's just almost inconceivable in that spot. And if that actually had happened, it would be more remarkable than somebody winning that pot with a nut spade hand. Somebody winning that pot with a nut spade hand is exactly what you expect to happen. Having 4 hands turn over and not having two spades anywhere among them is something that you would never expect to have happen on that particular situation. So, one of the little quirks to think about with Omaha, if the nuts are available, they are probably out there in a multi-way pot, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're not the one holding the nuts, and somebody is betting aggressively in Omaha, they probably have the nuts that you can see sitting on the board there. We haven't been getting a ton of great hands last little while. That's one of the reasons I haven't really been talking about the play very much. I've been largely folding pre-flop in most cases. There's nothing wrong with that. We got a decent stack now. We're sitting 133rd spot, which, as I said, is well in the cash. 540 caching at the current levels. So we're very happy with this. But again, it's very early days, and to really look at where we're sitting is not terribly useful at this point. And the reason for that is so much can change. We're still in fairly small bet range. I mean, we're at 100, 200, which is, relatively small, even given a starting stack of 5,000 chips. You can buy in right now and still have, 25 big bets. So really, it's pretty... no, so actually we're at 200, 400. Those were small and big blinds. So we're at 200, 400. So you're going to buy it now, and you're going to be at something like 12 big bets. But that's still a playable stack in limit games. When you play limit cash, you're typically only buying in for 20 big bets, maybe 30 big bets at most. Now, and that's a slightly different calculation because you really only care about having enough chips to cap the betting on all rounds of a single hand. You don't really, because once it's beyond that, you don't really care past that. You can reload before the next hand starts if you get chipped down. So you're really only caring about a single hand size in cash limit typically when you buy in. But the point being, a 12 big blind stack or a 12 big bet stack in a limit game like this is a perfectly playable stack for somebody to buy in now and go ahead. That said, we are coming up on our break here really quick, and that means that registration will be closing because it was a 2-hour late reg, and we are coming up on the 2-hour mark of the tournament. Late registration is open for 4 more minutes. We haven't quite hit 15,000. We're coming up on 13,500 in our total prize pool. And we haven't quite hit 5,000 total people. We are 4,471. So we're not going to cap 5 grand. We're not going to cap 5K, I don't think. But we're definitely going to cap 4,500 people in this tournament, and we're definitely going to cap $13,500. I am going to mute the mic and wander off and do some custodial duties, as I like to put it. And I will be back in a few minutes to chat. Later. Alrighty, we are back live with Anything But Hold'em again. I've just thrown the tournament lobby window up on here. As you can see, late registration ends in 1 minute. We have capped 4,500 people, but we're not going to get to 5,000. We're over 13,500, but I doubt we're going to get to $14,000 for our prize pool. So the numbers are pretty much as they're going to be, I think, at this point. There we go, 3,500 people left in the tournament now, with a couple of just having jumped in. 3502, we're going up. We are still sitting 175th. As I said, it's not really useful for us to work out where we are in the tournament at the moment. It's just useful to know that we've got a decent stack of chips in front of us, and we can play hands that we want to play for the most part. Last night, you might have seen me take down an 8-game tournament that I jumped into on a whim at about midnight because I was trying to find things to stream and I was busting out of the deuce to 7 I was running too quickly. It was a lot of fun. I have to go over and review that tournament at some point because I still feel like I was at the bottom of the chip counts for the entire way, and I got to figure out how the hell I managed to win the thing. I know in a couple of spots I got relatively lucky with the cards that I pulled, but that's not enough to explain how you can be the low stack for pretty much the whole tournament and still come out on top at the end. I did mention at one point that chip and a chair is all you need to win the thing. It turns out that is actually true, and the episode is 4B from last night, or 4A from last night, is a nice example of that. I like this little chip graph feature that they've got on the Stars lobby now. You can see I'm doing pretty good against the average stack. I'm not doing so good against the top stack, but as you can see, the top stack is somebody who bought in late, came into late reg. I was in almost from the beginning of this. I think I was like 1 minute late reg. But the chip graph activity shows that Militia is a far more active player than I am. I'm sort of happy to sit back on my stacks and just slowly build them. Clearly, Militia is a far more active player, constantly getting stacks in, losing chips, gaining chips, losing chips, gaining chips. Different styles of play, and one's not better than the other necessarily, but it's useful to look at it and see the different styles. Alrighty, I'm gonna take that down for now, so that we can see our table, and we can click that back on again later if we're looking for if you guys want to see some more information about what's going on. Please click the follow button underneath the underneath my video on my channel screen here on Twitch. If you like what you hear, that'll give you updates every time I go live. As the title suggests, the whole point of this series is going to be play largely anything but HoldEm. We will play some HoldEm sometimes. We have actually already played HoldEm here on Anything But HoldEm. A couple of days ago, we finished off the stream with a HoldEm tournament. But generally speaking, we're going to try to avoid the HoldEm, and we're largely going to try to avoid games like FLO that are played to death as well out there. Not that I don't like those games or that I have anything against those games. There's other people that do streams with them extremely well, and there's no reason for me to compete with guys like Jason Somerville, who's like the god of streaming HoldEm. Nobody's even comes close to Somerville as far as the streaming HoldEm is concerned, and there's just no way that I could even bother to compete with that stuff. That said, there's almost nobody doing mixed games. There's almost nobody doing the games like Deuce to 7 and Stud High Low and Badoogie and just the weird, odd variants of poker that are out there that are fun to play, but that you just never see on television or you never see in streams. So that's the point of what I'm trying to do here, is to give people an opportunity to see some of the other games being played. The level of play is going to vary from game to game. There are games that I think that I'm relatively good at. This Fixed Limit Omaha 8 is one that I'm relatively good at. Any of the high-low variants, I'm relatively happy with my skill levels on. But there's going to be other games that we play here that I'm not so good at. Yesterday was a draw day, and we were playing games like 5-card draw and a Deuce to 7. And I frankly pretty much suck at those games. And I was happy to admit that I suck at those games. I busted out of a couple of 5-card draw tournaments early in the day, and then I busted out of a couple of Deuce to 7s later in the day. And really the only thing that saved my stream yesterday as far as results were concerned was the fact that I banked the 8 game at the end of the night at about 4 o'clock in the morning and took that one home. But yeah, when I was focusing on the draws, on the 5-card draw games, pretty much sucked at those and pretty much busted everything that I played in. That doesn't really matter to me in this context, because I'm not necessarily trying to show you good play in any of these games. I'm just trying to show you how the games play. When I'm playing a game like FLO8 or Stud 8 or something like that, I'm going to happily give the advice that I have for you. And other times I'm going to ask you guys to give me advice, because I don't know what the hell I'm supposed to be doing at any given time. Not that you'll be able to give me advice in the actual hand I'm playing, but we can talk about the hands, and later on it gives me better strategy. I'm not really thrilled with the way the hearts came in on this one. I still think I've got a decent low, but even the low hand could be a problem. I've got to call through. I've got no choice but to call through, but I'm not real thrilled with the hand. Yeah, I'm losing on both hands. I don't really think I had a lot of choices to call there. My low could have been good, although on a 4 deuce, something like that, on that sort of board, your 4 deuce is really only going to be good if there's an ace 3 on the board. So in that context, my 4 deuce is rarely good. This is a spot where you might think that the 5-4-8 is worth playing, and it can be worth playing with 3 low cards like that, even when they're 5-4-8, something like that. The fact that we've got 3 diamonds on here really diminishes the power of any flush draws that we might get out of here. And the lows that we're going to pull are not going to be anything even approaching the nut lows, so it's really not a hand that you necessarily want to be getting involved with. Even now, we flop 2 pair on here, 8s and 4s, and we frankly are not happy at all with the situation that we're in. This one is a different situation. Yes, there's still 3 diamonds, and yes, that still degrades our flush draw to a certain extent. But the fact that we've got all 4 cards under 8, and the fact that we've got several ways to make straights and straight flushes make us fairly happy. Actually, no, our straight flush possibilities are limited to either low or high. We can't do anything in the middle because we're 3 in a row. But I still don't think that's a reason not to call this hand. There's just way too many ways that the flop can be nice to this hand that we have to at least see. We have to at least see the flop, even on a cap betting round. So we've hit 2 pair, and we're still drawing to a low that isn't a great low, but we're drawing to a low. We've got backdoor flush possibilities happening still. And we've still got some straights happening. If the 4 comes in, we've got our 5-6 straight. Anything that comes in, yeah, so we've still got straights and all sorts of things. So I don't really think that, again, I think we have to keep playing through on this one. We hope that the betting doesn't get capped on this round. We hope that, yeah, this is good. We can close the betting at 2 bets and see a turn relatively cheaply. If Cosmolol raises there, I don't know what we do, frankly. So we've lost our flush possibilities. Now he is raising. I think that because Mapsas's stack is so small, we probably need to stay in the pot, because I think the reason that Cosmolol is calling there, or is raising there, is to make sure that we get Mapsas in all the way. Well, having that heart come in sucks, but having the turn and river come out ace deuce is actually like a joyous situation for our low, because at this point now the only low that beats us is a 4-7. No, 4-3, I'm sorry. 4-3. So we managed to split low on that, which is not a great outcome. We quartered that pot. We knew we weren't really playing high. It's not a terrible outcome, but it's obviously not the best outcome that we want. It's better than losing the whole thing, though, obviously. This is one of those ones where we want to put chips in the middle like crazy. It's not the best low draw in the world, but we got 2 flush draws, 2 nut flush draws. We got the pair of aces to work with us, and any low that we do get at least has the ace nut at the bottom of it. When 2s and 3s come up on the board, it's often going to crush other people that think that they're playing with the nut low with an ace deuce or an ace 3, so our 7 ace can often do that. We don't have to worry about a low now. There are straights out there, but I think we're still throwing chips into this pot with our pair of aces. At this point, the queen, or at this point, the jack 8 and the jack king are beating us. But I really don't think that there's anything that we can necessarily do about that. We don't have to worry at all about anybody taking low, so high is going to scoop this pot no matter what happens. There's going to be no low. Of course, if you're wondering how I know that, it's because with 3 cards out here, Ace-Jack is now obviously taking me out. When 3 high cards come out on the flop, you cannot get a case where 3 low cards and 2 low cards from your hand make a low hand. So that gives us 2 pair, 9s and 7s. Our aces have just been counterfeit, which is not a terrible thing to have happen. But there's several ways that straights can be out there. The Ace-Jack, the King-Jack still makes a straight. Lots of things like the Jack-Queen make straights now. So there's just crap loads of straights out there. Do we need to call behind with our 2 pair here when there's so many straight things out there? I really don't think that we do, frankly. I just honestly don't see how 2 pair is ever going to be good in this situation. There's so many straights out there that I just honestly I don't see how 9s and 7s is ever going to be good in that situation. If you disagree with that, let me know in the chat window. Say hi in chat and tell me what you think. I just don't think that there's really any way that I can think that 9s and 7s is going to be good in that situation. There's just straight cards. There's straight hands with all sorts of different jacks out there, and you know, any jack at that point, any Jack Broadway combination is giving out the king high straight. So I can't really justify a call there, I think, in any way. Alrighty, we capped out our entries at 4606 total for a total prize pool of $13,818, which crushed the guarantee of 5K. That's like we're almost 3 times the guarantee, which is pretty cool. At the end of the day, 585 places are going to get paid out. This is pretty weak all around. You can play for the straights there in the middle with the 4-7-6 and the 7-6 or 6-7-10, but they're pretty outside straight possibilities. So I think that you're probably not wanting to play too much with that. Yeah, so 585 places are paid. A min cash in 585th will earn you $5.38. So something like a 60% ROI on your $3.30 buy-in fee. Way up at the top of the table, we have a first place prize of $2,172.70. So that's a pretty decent payback on your $3.30 entry. You're looking at something like 700 to 1 payback. There aren't even usually horses that pay like that. It's important to remember in tournaments of this size that getting through to be the person at the end with all the chips is a very unlikely proposition, no matter who you are, no matter what your skill set is. There's 4,600 other people that are trying to do exactly the same thing. And poker is such a swingy game that sometimes it's going to work great for you and sometimes it's not. So it's really tough to be the last person standing with that $2,000 prize pool at the end of the day in something of this size. Most of what I've been playing previously on Anything But Hold'em has been fairly small field buy-ins. The 08 or the 8 game that I won last night was like a 20 two-person buy-in, I think it was. And I don't think I've played anything other than a couple of Micro Millions that I've busted out of early. I don't think I've played anything on here that's been over 100 or 150 people total buy-in. So this Micro Millions is a little bit of a departure in that sense for me as a big multi-table tournament. But I love these sorts of things, and the Micro Millions format is a great way for you to get a chance at some pretty darn decent prize pools. I mean, $2,100 at the end of the day is nothing to sneeze at, especially not when you're only plopping $3.30 down for your few hours of poker entertainment. So I love these as a way to get a chance at big prizes for a very small amount of money. And it's also a fun way to get a chance of playing big field non-Hold'em games, which you just don't find elsewhere. I mean, when you register into a regular, well, let's say regular fixed limit Omaha high-low game on Stars, you know, you expect maybe 50 or 60 people to be in by the end of the day, but that's it. And Omaha is one of the more common ones. I mean, if you look at something like a stud high-low, if we get 25 people by the end of the reg period, we're pretty thrilled with the turnout of that sort of thing. So in these formats, it's really just nice to get into a situation where we have such big fields in a tournament like a fixed limit Omaha high-low or some of the other ones. Alrighty, I suppose you don't need to see the tournament lobby anymore. You might probably want to see my cards and what other people are doing, so let's take that off the screen. King 8, 10, 6. No reason to get involved in that hand. Frankly, it's just not really going to get us anywhere that we want to be in an Omaha high-low scenario. As I said earlier, I apologize if I am a little bit distracted on the voice at times. I've actually got another game going off stream in another window, a Premier League, a poker school online Premier League skill league game happening, but it's Hold'em, so we won't put that on this stream because the title at the top of the stream says anything but Hold'em. I've been playing around with different graphics over the last couple of days as well, trying to settle on a final sort of theme template for the site. If you've got any suggestions, let me know. This one where it's in the corner, I'm not entirely sure that I'm happy with it. I think that I'm a little happier with the way I did it yesterday. So I might end up going back to that. But either way, it's, you know, something that we play with and we have fun with. I'm a bit OCD about things like that, so it might actually change for a while. Alrighty, this is a pretty nice looking hand that we got dealt in the big blind here in our FLO8 game. The ace deuce is always the sort of hand that you want to play in Omaha low. Stud low for that matter as well. Is the ace deuce obviously is your nut low hand basically. We could certainly raise this and say and rep a bigger hand than we actually have. The reason I say it'd be repping a bigger hand than we actually have is that we really don't have a high at this point. We've got a straight draw or a flush draw that can develop for high, but as we see, that has not happened on the board. Unfortunately, this deuce kills the value of our ace deuce nut low situation, and it's a kind of a crappy spot for us to be in. And I think given the betting patterns here, the odds of there being an ace-3 out there are incredibly high. The odds of there being a 3-6 out there are reasonably high at this point. So either way, I'm pretty much drawing dead in both of those cases. So I think we have to get out of this situation. But yeah, I mean, the ace-3, one of these two guys has got ace-3. There's no question about that in my mind, which gives them the stone nuts at the flop. Now the spades obviously gives the high draw. But there's like stone nut hands like yeah, ace-3. There we go. I knew that the ace-3 was out there. There's just no way that the betting goes like that without there being at least one ace-3 out there. Deuce 5-8 for low. We could certainly go to play that. We don't really have any high developing. We can sort of look at a straight flush possibilities with our deuce 5 spades, but again, that's grasping at straws a little bit, and I think that it's probably not going to be in our best interest to play that hand. Now, we might look at this flop and say, well, you know, you had spades, and you flop 2 spades, you got a spade draw now, why, you know, being in the pot would be a good idea. And that's in some ways true, but our spade draw is a 5 deuce. In a game like Omaha, where everybody gets 4 cards, the chances of there being another 2 spades out here that are with one higher than my 5, it's really good. And even now, even if a spade comes on the turn, I'm not thrilled in any way with my 5 deuce flush in any sort of Omaha context whatsoever. And I hope that that's something that people get out of this, because Omaha is a very nutty game. If there's 3 or more people in the pot and the board shows something that looks very nutty, one of the people in the pot has those nuts. It's almost, you can almost set your watch to that amount of surety. And that doesn't change just because we're playing limit 08 instead of pot limit Omaha or something like that. It's still a nutty game. You want to be playing the nuts or very nearly the nuts, and there are lots of times when the nuts will be what ends up winning both ends of a high-low Omaha high-low pot. Far less so is that the case in stud high-low, for example. The nuts rarely will win the pot on stud high-low, just because the nuts is defined in a far different way without the community board up here. When everybody gets their own board, as they do in stud variants, the whole concept of what constitutes the nuts completely changes, and it's much harder to get, and therefore it happens far less frequently. On here, as I said, basically someone's going to have the nuts. That's pretty much a global rule of Omaha. Someone's going to have the nuts. We just got it in on our Premier League game, 9s over 6s. That's always a good spot to be in. And we doubled up over there. Not that you really care about my HoldEm game here on anything but HoldEm, but I thought I'd just update you on that. I hope all the poker fans out there were watching the main event final table coverage over the last couple of days. It's a really, it really is like a massive hype situation. There's no question about that. But at the same time, it is the biggest stage in poker, and it is the stage in poker that gets the most mainstream attention. So it's one that we should all be paying attention to, and you know, seeing what's going on. I thought the final table was a lot of fun. There was good play there. How do you got to feel today if you mark Newhouse busting out 9th 2 years in a row? I mean, that's just got to be soul crushing. I mean, it's weird. It's hard to imagine how you would take that. I mean, the fact that you final tabled the main event 2 years in a row is phenomenal. I mean, it's in the modern era when there's fields of 6,000 and 7,000 people. That's just, it's almost inconceivable that you could final table the main event 2 years in a row, and their new house is doing it. But what's even more inconceivable, of course, is that you would final table the main event 2 years in a row and bust ninth from that final table 2 years in a row. I mean, that's just brutally inconceivable. I think in the grand scheme of things, the odds against that are astronomical, I think. So yeah, it's got to feel pretty crappy, I think, in some ways to be Newhouse today. But on the other hand, it's got to feel pretty good to be Newhouse and realize that you've literally made poker history in a way that is going to be very difficult for anybody to repeat, or never mind break, but to even match 2 final table appearances in a row in the modern era of 6,000 person field final tables or main events. It's just unheard of, and the chances of it happening again, I think, are very, very, very low. So he has that to take away. But to go to that stage twice and basically walk away with a handshake and said, well, yeah, we paid you your money back in July. No matter what else is happening and what other records you're getting written, that's got to be a kick in the gonads, I think. You just can't, there's no other way to put that. I think if you're Mark Newhouse at this point, yes, there are good things, and I'm sure that 6 months down the road you can look back on your record of 2 final tables in a row and go, yeah, that's pretty cool. But you're never really going to get over the fact that both of those final tables ended with you busting first. I think that's never really going to be something that sits well with the average poker player, no matter what else is said. It's also always going to mean that there's an asterisk beside the record of 2 final tables in a row. And that asterisk is, well, yes, 2 final tables in a row, but that's all we can report about those runs in the main event. But nonetheless, it was a blast, and the Brazilian rail was a lot of fun while Politano was around. Billy Pappas actually surprised me and played better than I thought he was going to after watching the initial hour or so of Monday's coverage. He seemed really nervous at the beginning, but he really seemed to get into his stride after that and figure out that it was okay. He was meant to be there, and he had as much right to be there as everybody else and to make these moves, and he started to actually play poker, which was really cool to see. So that was really nice. Yeah, overall, it was just it was great. It was awesome. The way that it ended, I don't really think that the ending could have been scripted better. We're gonna fold that out there. I don't really think that the ending could have been scripted better. I mean, I guess there are arguments to be made for people like Politano winning and getting the Brazilian crew on board with and I think that there's arguments for somebody like Billy Pappas being the sort of amateur coming out of nowhere modern Chris Moneymaker story as well, that would have made for a good world champion. But Martin Jakobsen, I think anyways, is a poker player's poker player. He's somebody who's keeps his head down. He doesn't go out and chase the media spotlight and try to have cameras on him at all times like some other players potentially do. He's a very solid tournament poker player. He's maybe one of the best Well, I don't think maybe one of the best. He's certainly one of the best in the world at tournament poker. If the group that we're talking about is, you know, the top 10 or top 20 tournament poker players in the world, I think that Martin Jakobsen's got to at least be considered for that list, without question. Certainly certainly today helps, or yesterday helps that. But even before that, you know, the guy is a solid tournament poker player. There's no question about that. And having somebody like that, who is also friendly and polite and well spoken and well dressed and well groomed and well mannered. I just don't think you can say enough for how important that is for poker going forward in the mainstream perception, especially. This is an interesting. We've sort of checked through on our big blind because we got limped to over here, and we've backed ourselves into a reasonable flush draw with some low possibilities as well. With the ace-3 out, it actually makes our 8s-5 more useful if something like a 6 or a 4 comes out here, simply because the people play things like the ace-3s and ace-deuces quite a bit, and having the ace and the 3 out there, it hurts an ace-deuce hand, it kills an ace-3 hand, it hurts any of the ace hands that are going to play for low pot there. So it gives, when you're holding something like an 8-5, it gives you a lot better chance to take that low pot when you see an ace and a 3 come out or an ace and a deuce come out on the flop. So bear that in mind when you're playing the high-low games and you get into a situation like that. Our hand went from being a throwaway hand, if it gets raised pre-flop, we're probably never calling that, we're probably letting it go and letting these guys fight it out amongst themselves, to, because they limped to us and we were able to check through and see the flop, boom, all of a sudden we have got a super high equity hand on that flop, and a high enough equity that we can pull the pot in on the turn with a bet, even without necessarily having the best hand at that point. Ten Jack Queen Ace with two suits, or with a suit, is a hand that you would think looks fairly pretty in a PLO scenario, or even a fixed limit Omaha scenario. I would think. I would think that you're wanting to play this one. I don't know if you're jumping on it and playing it hyper aggressively, but you're certainly wanting to be in there and see what the flop brings. In a high-low situation, though, you have no low possibilities whatsoever, so you're really throwing away half the pot right away, and that's never going to be a winning poker strategy, no matter what you're playing or what the variant and what other strategies you're employing are. If part of your strategy is throwing away half the pot all the time, you're not going to go very far. So focus on the low. If you've got no low, get rid of your cards, and they're not really going to be any use. Yeah, granted, we would have hit the flush draw in this case, but at best, we are splitting the pot with somebody who's going to have a low that we don't. And at worst, somebody's sucked out on their. There was a straight flush draw there, and there's absolutely no reason why somebody can't be in this pot with a 4-5 of hearts, folks. Trust me on this. When you're playing a game like high-low, there's no reason in the world why somebody could not have been in that pot on a 4-5 of hearts. Ace-Ace Deuce, I don't care what the third card is, I am putting as many of the round betting discs into the middle of the table as I can with this hand, because it is basically not top, not bottom, at least before the flop comes out. Even after this flop comes out, there's probably going to be a straight draw that's hit off of this 5-8-9 here. We're still quite happily drawing to the nut low, and that's always a good place to be. So we're still happy putting chips in the middle. I mean, I think we still want, we either want to take the pot down now, or we want people to continue to put chips in, especially three-handed here. Unless there's somebody else with an ace deuce, which is always a possibility, so we might well be splitting the low. But getting three people to put money in to a pot that's probably going to be split is always a good idea for the two people that are going to split the pot. I don't know that he's going to split with me, but just saying, because of course you're getting extra every one of these. You're splitting his bets every time they go in. Alrighty, so in the end, we end up with the nut low and a pair of aces for high, which is not a very good high hand. But the fact that we've got the nut low means we're still throwing chips into the pot, and we're daring people to call us and see what we have. Little surprising how that hand turned out, frankly. As I said, there's a good chance that I was going to split low with somebody else who was holding an ace deuce in that situation. The fact that I won the high pot with aces is a little surprising in that situation. I would have expected that my aces wouldn't necessarily hold, and that I was more likely to have a low one. Hey Matt, welcome back. Good to see you. Let me do the tournament rundown here. I've through the magic of the computer tubes and everything, I can actually show you what is happening with our tournament structure. There is the tournament, you will see in 3 minutes that the tournament structure will pop up online, and you will see that there's 585 places being paid. With this, our top prize is coming out at $21.72.70, which is a pretty darn good payback on an investment of $3.30 if we get that far. And we're min cashing at 585th place for $5.38. We ended up total with 4606 in the event. Just to see here, we've got one person who has called in front of us, Marius over here. We've got 883 queen. We could certainly play this if we wanted to, but there's no reason for us to, so I think we're just going to fold out and happily let everybody else contest for this pot, because we don't need to. So yeah, it's a pretty good turnout, I think, for this, and at the end, 585 places paying. I'm in money position at the moment, but we're still a long ways out, so it's not really worth talking about that really at this point. But it's nice to know that I've got a stack in front of me that I can work with and I can play with. That said, I've got 15K now. I had about 10K a couple of hands ago before I hit that big pot where I took the high with aces and split the ace deuce lows. Whether I've got 15K or 10K at this point, I'm sort of equally as comfortable. I know that sounds weird to people, but it's obviously not the case. I obviously prefer to have 15K than 10K, so don't get me wrong with what I'm saying here. But either 15K or 10K at this point in the tournament is plenty of chips in a limit 08 setting for me to play the hands that I want to play in the way that I want to play them without worrying about that making me go broke. That's the point I'm trying to make. 10,015 is fine. Now, as we get deeper into the levels, that's going to change. You know, we're getting to 600 at 1,200 next time around, so with big bets of 1,200, even a stack of 10,000 is not a crap load of chips when you've got 4 betting rounds and you can cap those 4 betting rounds at 4 bets. You know, it adds up pretty quick, and you will get your stack in, actually, in a single hand in those cases. But that said, it's still a reasonably comfortable place to be. So I don't really care that I have 15K and that I'm 414th instead of having 10K and being 800th or 1000th. I'm still in a spot where I'm comfortable to think that I will be around when they start handing out $5 and 85-cent min cashes. Yeah, 3/4 them. That was a nice one. Like I explained, I didn't really expect to win the ace-ace by the time that we got to the end of the board there. But that's the way it goes sometimes in this game, and you will. Good things happen when you play hands like that, as is evidenced by that. So play hands like that because good things can happen. I wouldn't normally be anywhere near this hand in a high-low scenario, but of course they all check to me, or they all limp to me pre-flop. So what's a man to do? I mean, I suppose I could raise there and try to bluff people off, and it might work in that context, but more likely than that, they're going to call my 500 bet. They're going to see this flop, and they're going to, at least, I'm going to be playing for, at best, half the pot. And with cards like this out, and people liking to play ace deuces, ace threes, ace fours, I'm dead, basically, at this point. I'm literally, I think, drawing dead at this point. So a pair of jacks for me here, and I'm literally dead at this. There's no conceivable way that I'm good in that spot. I don't think. I don't think that there's any conceivable way that I'm good in that spot. Ace, ace, 7, jack with 3 diamonds. We weren't really thrilled with the 3 diamonds, obviously. We aren't thrilled with the ace 7 either. The ace, ace, obviously, we're thrilled about. And I think that this is one place where high-low strategy will differ from, for example, PLO strategy. We've flopped a gut shot straight draw. We've got backdoor backdoor diamonds. So this is a decent hand working up. We've just hit our straight. It's not the nut straight, obviously. The jack queen is the nut straight, but I still think we want to put chips into the pot in this scenario. Somebody with a 6 and a 7 or something like that might think that they're taking this pot from us. Yeah, the splitting was not a huge surprise there, especially when we paired the 7 there at the end. But yeah, Jack 10, 9, 10, Jack 6. It's a nice example of the sort of hand that you would probably play in a straight Omaha game, but that you're not really going anywhere near in an Omaha high-low game. What do you think of my magic effects there with the tournament lobby just popping up like magic on the screen there, and then just popping away like magic from the screen? I'm getting pretty skilled with this whole broadcaster thing, eh? Just out of curiosity, you were watching yesterday, I think. What do you think of the graphics I'm using, Matt? I've changed the title graphics slightly. How it's a square now going down the side versus yesterday where it was just anything but HoldEm on 2 lines written horizontally. I think I like the old way better, frankly. I thought I was going to like this way better, but once it got up on the stream, I'm really feeling like I like the old version better, but I'm curious about other opinions. So let me know if you like this one or the old one with the anything but HoldEm horizontally. Just horizontally with 2 lines, one under each other. Uh, 8866. This is certainly the sort of hand that you probably want to get involved with, even in a high-low. Your low possibilities are obviously not great, but having the double paired hand and the spades with them being connected is worth usually getting involved in. The fact that it gets to us with a 2-bet and a 3-bet means that we're far less. This hand has far less value than it did if we were opening the pot with it. So yeah, I think we're going to let it time out on us and fold. That's okay. Folding my cards was the decision I was going to make anyway. So thank you very much, Mr. Computer, for jumping the gun and doing it for me instead. So let me see here. This isn't going to be perfect because when I put the other titles up, I moved the picture and the chat box slightly, but it'll be close. So if I take down, let's take down the lobby. We're going to fold this out for now, I think. Take off the title square and put up the other. So like that, and then my name was down in this area, or down at the bottom of my picture, at the bottom of my picture before. So let me know whether you like that or whether you like whether you like this one with it going across. Or whether we like the title square like that. That's a hand we just want to get rid of. No point in even thinking about it, I think. You like it? Cool. Yeah, well, I think I'm gonna sit with it at least for today and see if it grows on me. I might, you know, play around with fine tuning, like move the picture a little bit more and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it's coming together. I think the format is coming together. Yeah, you think it's too busy up there in the top right corner. Yeah, I think that may be why I don't like it as much. It just feels like it makes that top right corner super busy and draws the eye there, when the truth is I don't really want your eye drawn to the top right corner. I want your eye drawn to the poker table and just have that top right corner be, this is who I am. So yeah, I mean, I think maybe you're right in that case. I think it just, because of the density, it just draws the density and the pointiness of it. It draws the eye to the top right corner, and I think maybe that's what I don't like about it. I think that I think I put my finger on why I'm not thrilled with this. We'll see. I'll let it sit for the rest of the day, and then maybe go back to the old one tomorrow if I decide that I'll go back to the old one. It's been fun to play with the format though and set it up. It's amazing what you can do. This is an amazing testament, for the record, to open source software and to that mode of stuff in general. This is a free open source piece of software that I picked up called Open Broadcast Software, and it is remarkably powerful in its ability to do various windows of content streaming out into cool, Matt. Yeah, no, go ahead and do what you need to do, buddy. I'm glad to have you around listening. But yeah, this OBS Open Broadcast software is remarkably multi-featured, it seems like to me. I haven't yet figured out how to put something on the screen that contains a link, like sometimes happens on YouTube, but I'm sure that I will find that eventually. But being able to pop screens in and out, there's a multi-scene function, so we can actually zip in and out. I mean, in fact, after we're done this hand, I'll show you, because this is a hand that we're definitely going to want to be involved in. We could raise here, double suited, ace deuce 4 for our lows. We certainly could raise, but you really don't have a hand at all in Omaha until you see a flop. Now we're pretty happy with what we've got. An ace 3 is ahead of us for low, but our ace 4 is second nut low. Situation at this point. It's draw only, of course, but we've also got the nut flush draw, so we're putting chips in this pot, and I think we're fairly comfortable putting chips in this pot at this point as well. If the club comes, we're thrilled, and the 7 of clubs isn't the best club to have come. In fact, it's probably the worst club to have come, because of course it pairs the board, gives a possibility of a full house on board now with anyone with a pair of kings or a pair of deuces. I'm still obviously, I think, calling through on this. I've got the nut flush and I've got the nut, or the second nut low draw, so I'm almost certainly going to continue to be involved in this. Obviously, I should say it's not just a pair of kings or a pair of deuces. The 7 deuce obviously has now hit a full house on me as well that I need to be wary of. But I can't, I mean, I can't fold the hand. There's just no way. That is the gin card for me, because it not only, basically, now obviously I'm still losing high to a full house, but I've just nut load basically with that. And I've got the nut flush, so the only thing that I'm losing to is high on somebody with a full house. So we are basically capping this betting round. Yep, that's three-quartering that one is what you want to do when you can quarter somebody else like that. That's a good hand of Omaha, of Omaha high-low. You want a scoop, but quartering someone is almost as good as a scoop. I mean, obviously, when the 7 of clubs comes there, you aren't thrilled because there is the possibility of a full house out there. But even in the Omaha game, you can't really, I mean, I don't really think, at least not at that stage, you cannot fold a nut flush just because you think there might be a full house out there. And especially in the high-low context, the odds of him playing a high-low pot with either a pair of kings or a pair of deuces is far lower, I think, in a high-low game than it is in a straight Omaha game, because those hands are both strong or reasonably strong in a straight Omaha game. In a high-low game, especially the pair of kings, you're throwing 2 cards out from your chance to make a low hand, so it really cripples half of your hand-making possibilities in that situation. So really the 7 deuce is the only full house there that I was particularly worried about. The pair of deuces was the second one, because if someone has dealt something like an ace deuce deuce, they're on that like Flynn. They're in like Flynn on that, and they're playing it like crazy. But it's never, I don't think, ever a hand that I can get rid of in that context at that time. It's just I'm just going to lose way too much money overall if I fold a nut flush in that context. If you disagree with me, I would love to hear about it in chat, of course, but that is just my opinion on that hand. There's really no way that I could have not done that. Once, of course, the 3 of clubs comes, the fact that it's a club is irrelevant in the Omaha context, obviously, but the fact that the 3 came out there and gave me the flat-out nuts for low, is what made me want to cap the betting on the river there. Without that, I'm probably check calling. I'm trying to get to showdown as cheaply as I can on that river without the 3 coming there. But when that 3 comes, I'm woohoo! That's, you know, I'm nutted on the low, and I'm not likely to be. Not only am I nutted on the low, that's part of the point, but the point is, being that it's an ace-4 with a deuce-3 coming up, the ace-deuce and the ace-3 hands that usually end up nutting out on low have just been counterfeited by the deuce and the 3 coming up on board. So my ace-4 is suddenly massively strong there when the 3 comes up on the river. So that's why I was capping the betting at the end, just for the record, if you're wondering that. We've just hit break, so I am going to step away and do my custodial duties that I need to do at these breaks. I would explode if I sat here for 3 hours and tried to stream straight without going off and doing things. So I will be back. And we're back here streaming the Micro Millions 59 $3.30 fixed limit Omaha high-low tournament, folks. We are hitting our 3rd hour of play. We just finished our 3rd hour of play, I should say. Let me bring the tournament lobby up on the screen again. We can see what our current progress is. After 3 hours of play at this break, we have 1,727 people left in the tournament. We have secured ourselves at 585 total places paid. And as we can see, a min cash in 585th will net us $5.38. So we've got about 1,200 people to go before we're in that spot, but we're not too far away there. Up at the top, we got $2,172.70, which is a pretty darn good payday when you're buying in for $3.30. It's not gonna let anybody retire, I don't think, but it's still not going to be a bad addition to most people's bankroll, especially if you're the kind of person that is playing $3.30 tournaments as a regular basis. A $2,000 score is going to be a nice bank in the bankroll. So I'm currently sitting 347th, so I'm sitting right sort of in the middle of the caching situation. Fairly happy with my stack. Obviously, getting that pot where I quartered the guy, where I quartered Mooney Man up here just before the break was wicked. That's always going to be something that you're looking for and trying to do, and it's always going to help your position out in the tournament. But even before that, at 15K, I was pretty happy with where I was. I wasn't in any danger of going out anytime soon, and I could kind of sit back and watch what was happening and just pick my spots to play fairly comfortably, and know that when I did, I had the chip stack to play with. Same spot now, just a little bit better in that situation. So yeah, I'm not too worried. I know that we're still a long way from actually cashing in this deal, which is, of course, my next step along the way to my goal of amassing all the chips at the end of the tournament. For the record, I used to. There was a time in my life when I used the hourly breaks on these online tournaments as a gauge of as part of my steps that I was talking about earlier. I'll reiterate that a little bit if you weren't listening. Basically, I look at tournaments as a series of steps that you have to take in order to get to your final goal of being the one sitting with all the chips in front of you at the end of the tournament. That's obviously always going to be our goal, and nothing else is ever our ultimate goal. But in order to be that person, there are places that you need to step to along the way that you will never be that person if you haven't stepped in those spots yet. One of the spots is, for example, to make it past late registration. Another spot is to be sure that you cash. If you don't cash the tournament, there's no way you're ever going to be sitting at the end with all the chips. So these are never goals per se, but they're always things that you keep in mind to say, I need to be, before I'm going to have all the chips, I'm going to need to have cashed the tournament at least, and things like that. Now, I used to use the hourly breaks as one of my steps in there, and I stopped doing that simply because that's a marker point that is completely ignorant of the tournament structure. And if you're going to set sub goals along your path of the ultimate goal of amassing all the chips at the end of the poker tournament, those goals have to be ruthlessly poker related. They can be related to nothing other than specifically poker related criteria in my mind. So I realized that using the breaks, which are based on the clock and have nothing to do with the structure of the tournament really, was a fundamental flaw in my strategy of setting points to look at as places I need to be before I can get to that ultimate goal that I'm trying to achieve. So if you're adopting the strategy and you're trying to set your own goals, then I would bear that in mind going forward if I were you. Don't make sure that any goal that you're setting is specifically related to the structure and the environment of the poker tournament that you're playing, the poker environment and the poker structure of the tournament that you're playing, because any other sort of goal is going to be counterproductive, I think, to the ultimate idea that we're trying to engender here with my idea of steps along the path to the final goal. Alrighty, so we called in with this hand because it's a reasonably good hand going both ways. We've got obviously the spade possibilities with our 3-7. Deuce 3-7 gives us 3 cards to hit for our low end. So I think we're going to keep putting chips in this pot, at least to see a flop. Make a decision again on the flop as to whether we've got equity to continue or not. We hit 2 pair on a board that does not look like there's a good chance of it drawing out to a low. So I think we want to keep putting chips in this pot. I think what happened here is that we our hand went from being a very speculative hand pre-flop to one with a fair bit of strength post-flop, because anybody who's in this hoping to scoop the low end is not liking this flop in any form or another, and anybody that was looking at something like a pair of kings or a pair, well, pair kings is bad, but pair aces or a pair queens on high, yes, and a full house just kind of caps the deal for me. King 7 is really the only thing that I'm really worried about now, other than pairs that hit hit sets on the flop. But I've basically got the nuts at this point. Oh, that was a horrible river. That was just a brutal river. Obviously, because we basically pushed that on the nuts, and that river flopped the nuts over to Gordon. That was brutal. We were on our way to scooping that pot, and it just got scooped out from underneath us. But hey, that is sadly what happens with games like Omaha High-Low. One card on the river, and this happens with Omaha, and suddenly what used to look like a very nutty hand has no resemblance to the nuts anymore. Case in point, my 9's full of 7s, or 7's full of 9s, suddenly became a piece of crap. This is a hand that we don't need to get involved in a high-low scenario. You're obviously probably going to be more interested in it in a straight Omaha high scenario. There's lots of equity for high hands in this, but your low hand equity is going to be pretty weak there. So again, as I've said numerous times, you're only playing for half the pot in that situation, and that's never going to be something that makes you a winning poker player, no matter what the format is. I just busted out of my Premier League HoldEm tournament. Looks like I busted out pretty close to being 0 points, which is actually a positive thing when you're playing Premier League. If you don't know the league structure, that's actually a good thing. It's not a good thing. It's the first place where it stops being a bad thing. But that also means that I am now able to concentrate fully on streaming this Micro Millions 059 $3.30 fixed limit Omaha high-low game through to its bitter conclusion, whatever that may be. We've got a raise in position here. We've got our small blind completing that raise, so there is 4,000 chips in the pot, and I'm being asked to put 800 in to win those. So I've got a 5-to-1 pot odds, and with the hand that I've got with an ace-4 like this, I can't do anything else. Once again, this seems to be the theme of our tournament today. We take a hand with a medium amount of equity pre-flop and turn it into something that's just massive once the flop comes down. The ace-deuce at this point is the only hand that's ahead of us. Now, the ace-deuce is very likely to be out there. It always is in a game like this, and you have to always be wary of that. But with the flush draw, I'm obviously not going anywhere for the high on this. And I think I'm continuing to put chips into the middle as well. I'm fairly happy, obviously, with my low at this point. The ace-deuce is the only one that does me. I'm not really liking any sort of a high. Betting, I think, is a losing proposition here. I'm only getting called by better hands, and I'm never getting called by worse hands. I'm never folding out any better hands. I suppose there's some high onlys that I might fold out in that situation, but I really don't think it's worth the extra chips to try to do that, frankly, in that spot. This is a hand that we could certainly play for 5-to-1 pot odds. It's not the strongest in any direction, but it's definitely strong enough to play 5-to-1 odds, and it's definitely strong enough to play 5-to-1 odds when you're flopping a set of kings on the flop. That's always a bonus situation. So we're going to put chips into this pot. It's pretty no-brain situation, I think. You flop a set of kings on a board like this, you put chips into the pot. King Jack is now beating us with a full house, as is a King 3. Of course, as are a pair of 3s and a pair of jacks, but I'm probably more worried about the King 3 than I would be about the King Jack in a high-low game anyways. And once the jack comes on the turn, the low hands are gone. So anybody who was hoping to suck out on half the low there has suddenly realized that they've got no hand, and they're sitting, they're kind of out there in the midair, like Wile E. Coyote when he realizes he's just run off the edge of a cliff. So they're going to get the hell out of Dodge when you throw a bet in there, no matter what, in that situation usually. So it's always worth doing that. So we're still feeling pretty comfortable with our position. There's 1,505 people left in, as we said, 585 cash here. So we're under 1,000 to go before we're at the min cash stage. I watch this not so much to, sort of squeak into the min cash zone, but just to, as I said, gauge my position as far as my stepping stone markers are concerned to the final place that I want to be, which is holding all the chips at the end of the tournament. So at this point, I'm really happy with my position. We are getting close to hitting another stepping stone, which is to be cashing in the tournament. That is a very important step, because if you do not cash, you will never be the person holding all the chips at the end. That is a fundamental law of poker. You must first cash before you can hold all the chips at the end of the tournament. So that is currently the micro objective that micro objective. I like that. I think I might have to use that. Micro objective that I have in mind is to make it to the cashing stage, to the ITM in the money stage. Of course, that's not my main objective. That's not my macro objective, but it is my current micro objective. 1477 left. People are going out pretty quickly now. What happens is that stacks get low. Our small stack is 70 chips, and I'll bet there's a bunch of people with between 100 and 700 chips at this point. There's probably at least 10 or a dozen people with that few chips. And those people are obviously going out as bets come around to them, and they're going out when they jump in with a hand that doesn't end up working out for them. And that's going to be happening fairly quickly over the next little while. And there's people with small stacks that will be in situations where they have no choice but to put all their chips in the middle in a situation where somebody else has got them crushed. That's just the way these sorts of tournaments go as you get into the bigger bet stages, and as the people who have been just hanging on start to realize that they've only got 1 or 2 big bets left. And so they're in desperation mode. We are nowhere near desperation mode, and we have no need to be even thinking about desperation mode, because we are still sitting with 10 big bets, which is a perfectly reasonable place to be, especially in a tournament structure like this, where there's so many people underneath of us. We're 459th, which is still in caching spot. Not that that really matters at this point. There's so many people underneath of us that need to think about doing things long before we need to think about doing things as a matter of desperation. So So, and I think being able to assess that level of need is one of the important skills of tournament poker that doesn't necessarily come across from the cash game. If you move from cash game into tournament poker, assessing your position in the tournament, the value of your relative chip stack as compared to the goal of getting into the money, getting into the final table, getting to be the one sitting with all the chips at the end. It's a perfectly fine, it's a perfectly fine place to be. And at this point, whether we're sitting 460th, we're 464th right now, whether we're sitting there or whether we're sitting at 700th, just outside of the caching zone, we're not really that concerned about that, because as people bust out, our relative position in the hierarchy of the tournament is going to change quite dramatically in some cases, and so it doesn't really matter at this point whether we're 400ths or 600th. Really, it would matter if we were. There's 1,385 people left, so I mean, it would matter if we were 1,200th, obviously. But the difference between 350 and 650 at this point isn't that much in the grand scheme of things. Whether you're sitting 350th or 650th, you can still very easily cash, and you can still very easily be going home long before anybody's handing out money at the cage. So it's important to keep both of those things in mind. You're in a comfortable spot, but you're not in the sort of spot where no bad things can happen to you. If you start making stupid moves, bad things can very easily happen to you even at this stage. The chip leader at the moment has 77,857 chips. They are somebody named DC Playboy from Germany, and they are just ahead of Kejba 1313 from the Czech Republic, with 74,585. Deuce 3-8 is certainly a hand that we could play if we wanted to. It's also one that we don't need to play given how early position we're in, and it's not a hugely strong hand. Depends on the flop. When an ace comes on the flop with that, your Deuce 3 suddenly becomes massive. So it's worth thinking about those sorts of hands. And that's an actually nice distinction. We've talked in previous streams a fair bit about stud high-low strategy, and used that to talk about high-low strategy in general. And I've done the same thing here with the fixed limit Omaha 8 parlaying into general high-low strategy. It's important to realize that high-low strategy in the Omaha variant and high-low strategy in the stud variant are going to be quite different. Because you're playing a community board in the Omaha, it can turn hands like 3-4, Deuce 3, even things like 3-5, 3-6 into massively stronger hands than they would normally appear, and than they would be in a stud high-low game. So it's important to remember that distinction when you're switching between a stud high-low and an Omaha high-low. The way that you think about the high-low hand, or the low hand, is quite different in those two games, I believe anyways. So that is an important distinction to make, that, there's obviously going to be a lot of general strategy in high-low that applies across all high-low variants. But at the same time, every poker game is unique, and every version of poker has idiosyncrasies, shall we say, that you need to be aware of if you want to play that variation well. And when I say every, I mean everyone. If you're talking about HoldEm, no limit hold'em, pot limit hold'em, and limit hold'em are vastly different games at their deepest levels. The strategies you employ, the hands that you play, the way you play those hands needs to be completely different in those three different kinds of Texas Hold'em. And the same applies across all games. Pot limit Omaha is a completely different game from fixed limit Omaha, which is a completely different game from no limit Omaha. Omaha is a completely different game from Omaha 8. Likewise with the studs. Just because it looks similar in the way that the cards get dealt out and the way that the table looks doesn't necessarily mean that you're playing the same game or even anything close to the same game. You know, we've talked about the sorts of hands that an straight Omaha player would jump on that you just have no desire to play in an Omaha 8 setting. This is the sort of hand that an straight Omaha player would have no desire to have any interest in. But the deuce 4-6, the 4-6 of hearts, make me really happy to play that sort of thing. Now, we flopped 2 pair, which in a, again, difference between Omaha and Omaha 8. If you flop 2 pair in an Omaha context, you're not thrilled, but you're not really upset with the situation. This has not only given me a weak high hand that could easily be capped out, but it's killed the equity, any equity that I hope to have on my low hands with my deuce 4 or my deuce 6 or my 6-4, because I've paired one of those in every one of those possible combinations that we can get. So in this context, by the time we get to the end, I'm actually shocked that there's no spades out there. But I was in pretty bad shape, really, no matter what I was doing. Definitely a hand that I wanted to go ahead and see the flop with. That flop was not the flop that I wanted to see with that hand. Down to 1,215 people in the tournament left, so we're not getting down to the nitty-gritty, but we're not too far off of it. Won't be too long before we're starting to have bubble talk. I obviously called this in because I was getting a good price, and the 5-4 deuce isn't a terrible way to start a low hand. We're probably not continuing here because with only one low card, our odds of actually making a low hand are pretty small. We've really, well, we do have the spades, but there could be other spades out there. We probably do need to see one more street and see how the people are betting and reacting to a spade that comes out. The fact that the ace of spades comes out gives me much more confidence in the strength of my high spade hand. It also means that my 4 deuce low is a much stronger hand. That deuce bites because it means I'm playing the 5-4, which is a weaker hand, but it really only means that the 4-3 is the only low hand that's beating me. I'm pretty confident that I'm going to put chips in and be the best. This is either a value bet if he calls. Well, it's a value bet regardless, but yeah, I mean, I was pretty sure that I was taking both ends of that pie. Both ends of that hot dog were going in my mouth at once, which is a really odd image now that I think about it, and I probably don't want to use that analogy ever again on a live stream. Thank you very much. Right, we are ace 4, king 10. The ace 4 is not the worst place to start building a low hand in an Omaha 8 situation. As I've said, when 2-3 comes out like that, you've suddenly drawn into the nut low, so it would have actually been a lot of fun to be in that, but it's not the strongest hand because you're basically 2 for up, 2 for down. We could easily have been, we didn't have a diamond draw, so we probably take the low in that scenario because it looks like he was playing a 5 to our 4 ace. But It's one of those, it's one of those questionable decisions pre-flop, perhaps. I mean, I certainly could have played that hand without being embarrassed or being accused of playing a weak holding. It's certainly not a strong holding, but it's certainly not a weak one either. So the reason that I don't like the hands like that is because we've really only got the ace and the 4 playing to our low hand. The king and the 10 aren't really much for the high hands, so your equity's not that strong either way. Now, obviously, when the deuce 3 flop comes out, or the 8 deuce 3 flop comes out, we're like, woohoo, we got the nuts. But we can't expect that flop to come out very often, right? And there's lots of other flops that come out where we don't have the nuts, and the guy that got in there on the ace deuce or the ace 3 very much has the nuts. So we're in bad shape. This is one of those straight Omaha-y hands that isn't so hot in a high-low scenario. All of your low cards are at the high end of the low hand range. Yeah, it's a good hand to hit straights with, and so you're going to take your high pot a reasonable amount of the time. But as I keep hammering home in these high-low games, you can't be playing your pots only for high. If you're playing your pots knowing that you've only got a chance at high, you're throwing away half the pot on every hand, and that's never going to be a winning poker strategy for you, no matter what the variation of poker. If you're always handing half the pot to somebody else when you're playing poker, you're going to come out behind. You're never going to come out ahead with that strategy. That's especially true, obviously, in the high-low variety, where there are essentially 2 pots to play for. If you're not playing for that low pot, you are giving you're just handing money to your opponents, basically, is what you're doing, and you really should not be doing that in any form of poker. Just a reminder of what we're doing here. This is anything but Hold'em. We're going to be streaming live real money poker action from PokerStars, but unlike a lot of the other streams that you can find on here, we're not going to be streaming 08 or I mean, we're not going to be streaming Hold'em or even a lot of PLO on here very much. We are going to be streaming the odd games, the things like this fixed limit Omaha high-low that we're playing today, which is the Micro Millions 59 for the record. We're going to be playing games like we've already played, like the 8 game that we banked last night for 20 some odd dollars. We're going to be playing games like 5-card draw that we sucked at so badly on stream yesterday. If you want a good laugh at how badly I can play some of these games, go have a look at the way I was playing 5-card draw and the deuce to 7 in yesterday's draw game streams. We've played stud high low. We played some Raz. We did actually started what will potentially become a recurring feature called the Sunday Raz, which is lovingly named after the British tradition of Sunday roast. We're going to serve up hopefully at least 1 serving of Sunday Raz at 9:20 p.m. Mountain Time most Sunday evenings when there's a regular Raz tournament that runs on Stars. So that will be the first potentially long-term regular thing that I'm getting. I've been moved tables twice over here on my FLO8 game, so I don't really know what the hell's going on with the with my table mates, because I've never seen any of them before. I think Titan 960 looks familiar, though. I don't know where Titan 960 looks familiar from. And this is not the kind of game that I have HUD stats on, so I don't know where I've played with him from before, but he does look very familiar. Ace 3, we're going to call through and see what we got on this. The 3 diamonds we're not thrilled with, and the fact that there's no ace in the set of diamonds is something that we don't like either, but it's not the worst hand in the world. It's not the best hand in the world, obviously, either. The fact that we've got 7-3 ace, giving us 3 cards for low, means that even if we do end up getting counterfeited on our ace or our 3, we still potentially have reasonable actually have a potentially qualifying low draw. So we're on a 3-minute delay for the record. If you're listening, that's just largely so that people can't snipe my hands. It usually means that the hand that's up on stream right now is the hand that before the one that I'm playing in the real world now as I'm chatting. Maybe 2 hands before the one that I'm playing in the real world. We're not too far behind the actual live tournament, but we're not exactly on the actual live tournament either. We flopped 2 pair, which, as I've discussed previously in the high-low, Omaha high-low scenario, especially when the 2 pair that you flop are 2 of your